my North Star is that developers are hyper-productive at Shopify. And the tools that we bet on for this hyper-productivity is AI. We've been tackling flaky tests with all the standard ways by isolating them, running them in different order, identifying the flaky ones, assigning them to developers at like this huge scale, and having people be really seriously addressing fixing. But that's a never-ending problem. Can we do something and maybe end it? Can we have AI do this work? That would be an incredible productivity boost for the entire organization.
Welcome, folks. In our new episode of HangarDX podcast, we're going to be talking to Daniel today. Welcome, Daniel, joining from Shopify to our HangarDX session, and we're going to talk about how Shopify is evolving in AI engineering and how kind of like AI itself is impacting software engineering. Like Daniel has a very interesting background of going from an IC to a manager and back. So we will cover some of those topics as well. Just to give you some background, folks who are joining for the first time, we run these HangarDX podcast sessions talking about anything related to developer experience, and obviously AI being a hot topic, we definitely cover a lot of that too. Before we get into the weeds, Daniel, please introduce yourself briefly.
Hi, thanks for having me. Well, since we can't talk about AI, we could stop it here. No, just kidding. We will talk about AI, I'm sure, all this entire podcast. My name is Daniel. I go by DB. It's an old nickname from the computer underground. I'm a director of engineering at Shopify. I joined fairly recently, 3 months ago. I run a team called Augmented Engineering and have had a long and exciting career in tech, from entrepreneur in the 90s. I had 2 companies. Actually, one of my first companies was in the AI space, a total failure. And I had no idea what I was doing. This was college times.
Too early for your time.
I think it was too early for the technology. We had it in theory, but we couldn't make it happen in practice. We were very ambitious, but we failed, and it was a good experience, I suppose. And I worked for some large companies. Worked at Microsoft. I worked for a database security company in New York, based in Manhattan, and a bunch of other places. Amazon, AWS. I was individual contributor. I was CTO of a company called Artsy, ART.sy. Amazing company. I was there for 8 years. I've been working on developer tooling a lot as well, from on and off. So here I am.
Love it. All right, we're going to talk a lot about different things. And okay, how about just we straight up dive into one of the things that you mentioned, which I am not very familiar with. Just heard about it while researching about your background, is augmented engineering. So what is augmented engineering, and how does Shopify think about it?
Augmented engineering is a term that I think Paolo Arruda on my team has coined. We were talking about what to call this team, and augmented engineering came up. So the idea is that we're an engineering tooling team, and we care about our craft, and we want developers to be incredibly productive. We live within the developer productivity organization at Shopify, but the distinctive factor, the distinctive aspect of the tools that we built is that they are leveraging AI where it makes sense. And so in a way, we call that augmented engineering. We're very familiar with developer tools, but the ones that have significant AI aspects are augmented in a way. So we think of this as augmenting engineers with AI tools, or augmenting tools with AI.
Nice. I also know that Toby did post about how he strongly feels about adoption of AI internally in your day-to-day engineering. How has that evolved? I mean, obviously, you only been there 3 months, so it's a very short amount of time. But I also know software engineering is moving. This space is moving extremely fast. So tell me a little bit about, what's the overall position of Shopify? How are you participating in that? And how does your organization think about it differently?
Well, yeah, 3 months can become 3 years really fast in this space. I agree. So it's an easy mistake to make. Well, I'll speak on behalf of myself. I think I was wondering the same thing. I'm brand new, so I know nothing. I was when I saw those types of announcements and Hacker News posts, I was wondering like, what is it inside? And that was one of the big motivators for me to join Shopify. I wanted to know what does Toby mean, and I thought that we were doing a lot of AI in my previous job. I was working on OpenSearch. It's a fork of Elasticsearch and Kibana. It's an open source search engine that does things like RAG, and there's a whole platform to do machine learning. So I was pretty familiar with AI, and within AWS, there was a top level mandate to do more AI. And we talked about AI every day. And I was like, well, what can it look like elsewhere? And I was absolutely shocked by how much AI Shopify does. Like, for example, I have not interacted with a human in IT in the 3 months that I've been there. The bots have been able to resolve basically every single one of my problems. And I sometimes wonder whether there are actually any humans working in these departments because it just works so well. And the AI is integrated in these obvious workflows like IT support in a very seamless and clean way. And so that's a pattern that's everywhere at Shopify. By the time I joined, AI was part of every single thing that Shopify was doing every day. And it's not just let's adopt a bunch of tools, Cloud Code or VS Code, or Copilot or Cursor. That's already the default, and that's what the company calls as reflexive use of AI. You just use AI first whenever you have a problem, and then if that can't do it, then you can use your own hands, or I guess. So it's very much a collaboration between AI and humans everywhere, in every aspect of the company, and it's super impressive, and definitely on the cutting edge of what I thought AI could be. Um,
Very interesting. Are there like specific use cases that you find are more novel to Shopify?
well, I can talk about some of the use cases that are obvious and some of that are not obvious. You can see in the product there's a lot of AI tooling going on. Like
Mhm.
customers of Shopify are getting chat, and you can interact with it in incredible ways. It solves so many problems that you have. Like if you have a store on Shopify and you want to converse with a expert about your store, about your financial return numbers, about the opportunities to do better sales, merchandising, building the website. All this stuff is now AI enabled, and the tools are deeply integrated, and they are absolutely spectacular. Like really cutting edge, amazing tools. Like this would be a huge reason to use Shopify. It's cheap, and you can build incrementally from like tomorrow you can want to start a store, open a store online, and that will cost you, a few bucks, and you have all these AI tools available to you right away. So that's very impressive. Internally, the use cases around engineering are some of the obvious ones, like using Cursor as a when I write code, like I just TDD myself, like write the test, and then sometimes the AI writes the code for me, or vice versa. Or there are more interesting ways of using AI, which the way I use it is like I'm a professional contrarian. I argue with people all the time. I'm like, if you have an opinion, I'll have a different opinion. So my AI is my contrarian. I argue with
Hmm.
with an AI agent all the time about like, I think we should do this, and the AI is like, convince me otherwise. And so that I thought
Interesting.
was really really cool, a personal way of using the AI.
That's very interesting. Like I always find it challenging for AI to actually really contradict me in the sense that every time you ask it, it's like, hey, I think you're making a mistake. It will very readily accept that it was making a mistake. It kind of like almost tries to please you. Do you have like any tips on like how do you actually make it more contrarian?
Yeah, you have to prompt it to be contrarian, but sometimes it's nice for your ego to just get the AI to tell you that it's a great idea. So I try to tell it in patterns like, you can always tell me it's a great idea, but you have to argue the opposite point. So be nice, but And so I ignore all the things before the button. And different models do differently the job of arguing
Yeah.
with you. I just think it's an unusual way of using things. Other ways of more obvious ways of using these agents, like we have people write prompts for like your customer support agent, and so you tell it like what kind of customer support agent you want it to be. You give it access to a bunch of like useful data, and then you ask it to help you with a customer problem on behalf of a
Hmm.
customer. That's like one way to use it. My team though works a lot on internal developer tools, and that's a whole other ball game there.
Nice. So let's kind of like also zoom out a little bit. I want to talk about like developer experience at Shopify. I mean, obviously, I've also read a lot about like Shopify has invested heavily into developer experience from a long time.
Mhm.
How has that changed with augmented engineering specifically? Is it the same thing? Is augmented engineering a part of DevX, or is it kind of like now that you're kind of like also working in DevX, is that all encompassing itself?
So Shopify is an interesting company. We have thousands of engineers and
Hmm.
thousands of humans, and we collaborate in what increasingly looks like a monorepo, and it's quite large. It's the largest Ruby on Rails app. Um, to simplify the description of that, but it's a really impressive piece of technology, and it comes with its own rough edges. A few years ago, I'd say Shopify, from my understanding of Shopify, is that it was looking sort of like many microservices, except they
Hmm.
may not have been truly microservices, and it would be deployed to production one by one, and then cause certain amounts of incidents in production independently. So, like
Okay.
if you have one incident a year, you may hit some of the nines, but it's not very good, but it still sort of seems acceptable. But because you have 400 of these things, then customers would experience outages more frequently. So the answer was to go to a monorepo, to have a single CI pipeline that takes the monorepo multiple times a day and runs all the tests and makes sure that that is deployable in waves in production. So that whole workflow is highly tooled. So you get a laptop, you get amazing machines these days, M4, M5 Max, and these things are incredibly powerful. And you check out, you use a tool called Dev. Obviously, it's a pretty obvious name. And Dev checks out the monorepo for you, uses get sparse checkout, and manages that checkout for you transparently. And the things you can do locally is things like DevUp, which will bring you basically some part of Shopify or potentially all of Shopify locally, so that you can go and develop. So the idea, kind of the north star of that tooling, is that you can do DevUp and then run maybe Dev Server and vibe code a feature in any part of Shopify using AI tools. And that I've seen demos where people do that, and it's really impressive because they're not engineers, and they're able to
Hmm.
use engineering tooling without having to understand what's going underneath there. This is this is to contrast with what happens with development out there. Like, I'm very active in the open source world, and one of the projects we contribute to is LibreChat, which is a open
Hmm.
source chatbot. That's what we use internally at Shopify, and my team owns that as well. But my experience of contributing to LibreChat and open source is like, go read README and run npm install a bunch of times and hope for the best. Maybe I'll need like figure out how to run tests, figure out how to do so many different things, and like half a day later, I will have a sort of a productive development environment where I can go and develop, edit the code, and see my changes. At Shopify, our internal fork, it's not even a fork anymore. It's just like an internal mirror of the upstream repository because we work primarily upstream. I can go into it and do dev cd librechat dev up, and voila, I have a completely working system with its multiple databases, caching servers. There's like a RAG pipeline system, and so on and so forth. Like, I don't need to know anything about npm package managers, none of it, and it opens a cursor window for me, and I can go and ask the AI to add me a feature, and that works, and that's pretty amazing. So that's what local tooling, at least in theory, looks like. Of course, it comes with its own challenges, but that's the interesting North Star, AI-enabled North Star, is that you should be able to vibe code a feature if you want to. And we know we just had Summit, a global hackathon, and like so many things are done like that. People who have zero technical knowledge have been able to add incredible features to all over the products that we built. That's one big reason. The second one is once you're in the CI pipeline, then AI can become a real collaborator to your pull requests, comment on things, improve things, and so on and so forth. And so you can start seeing things that are more advanced, like it could write tests for you. It could tell you that your tests are of low quality. And I can talk about some of the problems. Like some of these we're trying to solve on my team. So think of AI as like an ongoing companion, sometimes agent, sometimes superpower at all the steps of the way in this process. And that's what we build.
That's very interesting. That's a lot. And I'll be curious to know, how is it very actively that you see contributions from non-developers now?
Well, yes and no. I think there are. Shopify is a very experimental culture, so it's you're encouraged to experiment and try things and prototype things.
Mm-hmm.
I think so you can see a lot of user experience being built in Figma, and that's like the natural way of doing it. With AI, you can go a step further, and you can actually make that work in code. That we're starting to see occasionally successfully. For individual features, like if the feature matches a pattern, like I have a bunch of buttons and I want to add another one that does something similar, that's like a great place you can vibe code your way.
Nice.
But so I wouldn't say that these are features that we ship, but these are certainly features that this is like an additional thing you can do
Nice.
as, say, a designer in code. That's I think why it's so cool, because it wires up the data. So this is a lot more than Figma can do.
That's
They
right.
can
That's right.
see the results. So it's a great use case. So yeah, we
No,
see some of it.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, in fact, like I've also personally started using a lot of these like cursors and V0s for prototyping, just because kind of like, yes, it creates more interactive capabilities, even if it doesn't build end-to-end systems. So has also changed a lot of my way of operating.
Yeah. Uh,
Okay.
It's hard
Yeah.
for me because I'm a very old school, and so I'm trying to. I'm also often that this reflexive use of AI is really something that we work hard on at this company. I really try now to, before I apply my personal favorite method, I try to use an AI to do it. And it can be something super simple. Like very recently, I needed to extract a list of things from a website.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way I do it is kind of crazy. Like it's view source, copy paste, and bulk replace in like
Oh my
with
God.
multiple select. And I'm like, why am I doing this? This is insane. So I download the file, I pull up cursor, and I say, write me a script that extracts the list of blahs from this website. And it like
Hmm.
writes me 2 pages of JavaScript that I can just run in console,
Copy
and I get
paste.
back a CSV file of that output. Done. That's it.
Nice.
This
Very cool.
It's super productive power.
That's amazing. Okay, so I want to switch gears, but before that, I want to at least understand one part, which is prioritization and planning. So you were kind of like, I would say, in some ways, running some of the DevX function at Shopify, and there's tons of like excitement going on with tools popping up every day, almost, right? Like, how do you think about like planning and prioritization for work that your team is doing for developers, more specifically, right? Like, are there specific metrics that you kind of like look at? Are there surveys through which you're kind of finding these things? Are people just sharing these tools and asking for, hey, can we use these tools? Like, how does kind of like your, I would say, quarterly, monthly plannings going on?
So Shopify's mission is to make commerce better for everyone.
Mhm.
And developer productivity organization's mission is to make making commerce better for everyone. So, uh, in addition, my team's mission is to augment that, like the little asterisks, with AI. So it's my North Star is that developers are hyper productive at Shopify. And the tools that we bet on for this hyper productivity is AI. So we prioritize, my team specifically prioritizes things that are improving developer productivity in the long term. And because we're betting on AI, we are trying to increase the amount of things that are like we look for problems. We're not trying to use this as like the solution begging for a problem. We have a number of serious large-scale problems that have been very difficult to solve with humans. So let's take some examples. We have a large code base with hundreds of thousands of, say, tests, and like literally many hundreds of thousands. And our test coverage is pretty good. Like we're good with testing, but if you really look at the density of test coverage, it's not that great. So you can have a controller and you can have a test for the controller, uses a class. That class may not have a detailed unit test. So we're thinking of like, how can we generate the missing tests with AI, like another 100,000 tests with AI and increase the code coverage? Can we generate actually useful, great tests? Why would we do that? Because ultimately we believe in a future where AI agents are refactoring the code base. And there's many maintenance tasks that we want to do at Shopify monorepo scale with AI. And we're a little bit scared that we can unleash AI and it will like, go and break things and then fail things in production. That wouldn't be great. And developers that are code reviewing, 100,000 lines of code changes, that it's easy to miss things. So we need to increase our test coverage there first and foremost. So we're after large scale problems that are not tractable by humans. Another great example is flaky tests. Flaky tests at the size where you have, I don't know, 500,000 tests is a constant problem. The amount of technical debt that the organization has is massive at any size like that, and flaky tests are the plague of your path to production. So we've been tackling flaky tests with all the standard ways by isolating them, running them in different order, identifying the flaky ones, assigning them to developers at like this huge scale, and having people be really seriously addressing fixing flaky tests. But that's a never-ending problem. Can we do something and maybe end it? Can we have AI do this work? That would be an incredible productivity boost for the entire organization. So we're after this type of problem. So we prioritize is it on the path of solving really large, really difficult engineering problems, and are we especially the ones that are not solvable with human power today? That's how we work. That's how
Very
we work.
interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, Daniel, I saw your background is very interesting. You went from being an IC to a manager to leading entire engineering and back to an IC sometimes, and now you're back leading as well. Share a little bit about what you think about this role and like role transition, and especially with the lens of everything changing with AI. Like, is there a relation to that?
I see the leading question is like, now that all the engineers are being replaced with AI, is it time? How do you prolong your employment?
There you go.
I guess by being a manager, because all the individual contributors will not be needed soon, will be replaced with AI. Thankfully, I'm not a junior engineer, right? So my IC work is safe for a little bit. No, I think to me, I always loved coding and never stopped, and so uh, whether uh, whether I see roles or managerial roles, they're just very different jobs. I also do like working with people, and I keep going back and forth my entire career, being an IC, then being a manager, being an IC, being a manager. In the beginning, it was not deliberate. I just made a thing, and then somebody came to my office and said like, "Hey, this thing that you've built, do you want to work on it full time? By the way, like here's 5 headcount." So I became a manager. and I had no idea what I was doing. But later in my time, I deliberately wanted to set direction for a team, be responsible for all the technology, and working with people and enabling them to do their best work. So I keep going back and forth between wanting to just write code and be an experienced IC because I enjoy it, or trying to find groups of people that together can deliver something extraordinary where they are multiplying each other's capabilities. But I think both jobs are awesome.
Interesting. And what percentage of your time today do you use writing code? I guess it also depends on how much is written by you versus AI.
Yeah, I mean, I use AI to write code all the time now. I still have a bunch of pet projects that I code on weekends in my copy's free time, and that is, me just sitting down and getting my dopamine of adding a feature or fixing a bug or something like that. And then I do a lot of open source. So I still contributed to things like Ruby Grape and I don't know, like OpenSearch. There's still clients and things like that I'm involved with. I have a bunch of Slack bots that are my pet projects that I work on because somebody really wants a feature. So this is my IC work on my copy's free time. I'd say I don't write a lot of code, but I write code every few days. It depends on where my team and organization is at. I think
Hmm.
for a manager at any level, if your team is healthy, you should have time to write some code. So it can be whether, and it's a good metric for a manager. Like, do you have time to write any code at all? It doesn't have to be like production code or anything like that. So at the last Shopify hackathon, which was a week ago in Toronto, I wrote integration for we have an AI bot that generates images. That's like a front end to DALI,
Hmm.
and it's called Shopee. It's really cool. And I just wrote a Slack integration because I love Slack bots, and you can
Nice.
do /Shopee and blah blah blah, and it works like Giphy inside of Slack and gives you an image. That's pretty cool. So yeah, it was code. AI wrote most of that code actually, to be frank, but I had to supervise it. That's my managerial job.
That's very interesting. So it sounds like, especially with the AI making, writing a lot of code these days, it is somewhat expected, I believe, for many of the managers to write code or at least be sort of like TLMs in some ways, right? I think that's probably like how would you say management is evolving?
No, I don't think management has evolved very much. Good management always requires a manager that the team can trust.
Hmm.
And engineers trust other engineers. Craftsmen trust other craftsmen. Doesn't matter what your title is, how senior you are. You look at people by what they do and what they make. And so it's really easy, quote unquote, to earn trust from from an organization of developers if you yourself have written or write code at all, or at least sometimes write code to show that you can be a little dangerous. Like I actually understand what you're doing, and so I think it's a baseline required. Writing code it's like speaking a language.
Hmm.
You sometimes you just need to speak that language. So come speak Ruby, French, or Russian to me, and I'm we could have a real good conversation.
I guess that's a very small subset of people who are speaking Russian, writing Ruby, and you said French as well.
Yeah, but you'd be surprised. I know more than one.
Nice.
People have a lot of hidden talents. That's a manager job. Inquire about people's interests, lives, and you'll find many that speak all these programming languages.
Nice. So, just kind of like double clicking a little bit back on the roles transition. So, you talked about going from a individual contributor to a manager, and then kind of like also the other way around. I feel like I see to a manager, many engineers expect that they will at some point, will might need to lead the team. So, maybe a couple of questions there. One is like, is there a reason an IC should not turn to a manager? Are there kind of like particular scenarios where they can actually make a bigger impact as an IC? And I think the second would be, are there times being a manager that uh, somebody should consider transitioning back to an IC?
Yeah, well, a lot of literature has been written about the manager path from IC to manager, and I cannot recommend Camille Fournier's book enough, The Manager Path. that talks about transitioning from IC to manager. And when you are an excellent, a very strong IC, and you have people skills, somebody will come to you and ask you whether you want to consider being a lead, a manager, actually managing people's careers, compensation, hiring, and so on and so forth. So it's inevitable almost, but it's amazing that in our industry, that is not the only path, because I know plenty of people who are really good at both of those things, who love being individual contributors. They just want to write code all day, solve interesting problems. So it's a bunch of cliches, but it's true. And you don't want to become a manager if you love what you're doing and you have the opportunity to be rich and famous in software without ever being a manager. Like I work with a Ruby on Rails team at Shopify like fairly closely, and there is a bunch of internet celebrities there. They're all ICs, and they are incredible developers, and none of them want to be managers. There's some of the strongest developers. They're working on like YJet and optimizing Ruby performance parallelism, things that are the dream of a technologist. Like really hard stuff. Similarly, how at AWS you can learn how real distributed systems work. I went there to do that, to learn how real distributed systems work. And so yeah, you can be an IC all your life. It's great. Manager is a different job. It's a harder job in some ways, and it's an easier job in others. And whether it changes with AI, yeah, probably, but I don't know how yet.
Are you seeing any changes internally?
Yeah, I think there's the nice thing at Shopify. Managers are always expected to get stuff done. The internal motto is get shit done. There's actually an internal tracking system called GSD, get shit done. And everyone is expected to roll up their sleeves to a large extent. Like there's no managers who just have status trackers or cheerleaders and like organizers, pointy-haired, Dilbert-esque pointy-haired boss. You are supposed to get to do a lot of things yourself, and so AI enables you often to do more with your own hands. Like my simple example of extracting something from a website, or like getting data. My boss actually, who's a VP, recently did an amazing thing. We have a Slack channel for problems with our developer tooling, and he wrote an MCP or connected an existing MCP and did a collection of data from that Slack channel, which with an AI that classified the problems, sorted them out, provided examples, and generally reported what the top problems are. It took him like 10 minutes. I was ready to hire an analyst to go through the entire channel because there is thousands of messages. And it occurred to me that I should try an AI for this, but I didn't get to it. But I just went ahead and did it ahead of anyone else and produced amazing results. So you can see how it doesn't matter what your level is at this point. The tools are allowing you to answer questions you have without having to delegate them 3 levels down to a poor engineer who's like stuck there collecting data and building and writing code. Like you can actually do it yourself.
That's very cool. So it's impressive. Like even you're saying, not even just the first line managers, which tend to be like TLMs in many companies. Like you're saying, like even second line managers or like second level managers and directors, VPs, everyone is writing some code or is expected to do some work.
Or using AI to be productive. I mean, our CTO does. He talks about AI models and the differences between them all the time. And he's like, this is what I did. Like he'll be like, I ran this thing, it found these bugs. And here I am trying to work with a team that's trying to do this systematically at scale, with thousands of places and finding like for now mixed results. But like he's like, I did this. Why can't we do this 10,000 times in parallel? Isn't that what AI is for? It's unfortunately not that easy, but yeah, absolutely. Everybody should be like that. Like everything is a technology company. Everyone is a developer. If you don't have to know how to do C++ anymore, you should, and it's an important skill. You need to be an expert in many things, but these tools are force multiplying, and anybody can drive them.
Very cool. Do you also see that? So at least 3 months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, I'm fuzzy on timelines these days. There was this scenario where it's like, okay, AI can get you 80% there, but like the other 20% still has to be kind of like managed and supervised by developers. Where it's like, if you get stuck in some sort of a configuration, some sort of an error, you need help, especially if you're a non-developer. Do you see that happening lesser and lesser now? I feel like kind of like, especially with some of these tools, they also are good at debugging issues. But I'm also curious, like, where do you see sort of like more adoption happening with non-developers?
Yeah, I think these are two questions. The first one is the AI better at correcting itself? It certainly is. We open sourced a thing called Roast. It's a AI workflow tool, and the way we use it is kind of interesting. We wrote a workflow that grades tests, and we wrote another workflow that generates tests, and one can use the other. So you can do like grade a test. If you get an F, generate a beta test, improve it, and keep iterating until you get an A grade. So the models are definitely every week you swap the model in those workflows from Claude this to Claude that, and like you put Opus in there, and you're going to see mind-blowing results. Like every Friday, somebody comes to Shopify Slack channel, goes like, "Oh my God, the new thing is like just like solved my world problem, in like spectacular ways." So it's happening. The AI is getting better fast, for sure. I don't know where it ends, but I certainly want to be there. I want to be the first one to know. but you have to recognize that it did a good job, though, and in a way you have to be an expert in something to recognize that. Like if we're talking an AI that makes dinner, like we can cooks, we can all recognize when something tastes really good or something tastes really bad.
Right.
And you need to really know. So it might produce something extraordinary that has tons of problems, right? Like security problems. And we still need to be an expert to recognize that that's the case. Otherwise, it look really good, but tastes really bad.
That's true. All right. So I know we are coming close to the end of this session. Maybe one question, if you can help answer for audiences. Clearly, Shopify is doing really well when it comes to adoption of AI internally in all the across engineering and non-engineering as well. For the organizations who are trying to push better adoption of AI tools internally, do you have any recommendations?
I think I really am impressed by Shopify doing this a year ago before I arrived, being like, okay, this is a real transformation. There is a shift here. It's a big deal, and so we don't know what the future of commerce looks like. We do know there will be more entrepreneurs, and there will be more people starting businesses and selling things. So that is a constant, and we're here to create more entrepreneurs and to make commerce better for everyone. That won't change, but we don't know what it will look like tomorrow, what commerce even means tomorrow. So we need to be on the front line of the technology so that we don't miss a turn, and so we can leverage it better than everybody else. So that, I think, changing the attitude towards it is critical. But then you also need to do the hard work of giving access to these tools to your organization. If you don't have an internal chat deployed today, start there, and then connect MCPs to everything in your company to that chat. And by the way, Shopify like 3 weeks ago didn't have a single MCP in our chat. And I think today we're talking like there's like 42 or something like that. I picked a random number. But everything, it goes very, very fast. This technology is evolving rapidly. And now we have MCPs in chat that are effectively giving you access to all the information you have in your company transparently. We're working on like authentication and authorization so we can get the data that is your data. We're working on connecting local MCPs to it. But like these are enabling tools. So deploy them in your company. 2, change the way you work. Give require that you, or give access to your developers, if you're an engineer organization, to the tools like Cursor, tools like Visual Studio Code, and all the AI enabled editors, like, immediately. 3, change your hiring to stop doing like whiteboard puzzles and start allowing the use of AI in your interviews. Ask people, how do you use AI? Give me an example from your past job where you used the AI effectively, and hire those people. There are plenty out there that are not just enthusiasts, but get a lot of things done. They've tried the tools and they persevered and they created some amazing results. Those are the people you want in your company, the ones who are doing it. And it just reminds me of in the early days of the internet. Like, people were, we have typewriters, or then we have computers. My parents yelled at me because I was spending too much time in front of a screen, and my dad thought the internet was stupid. He thinks AI is stupid today. Like, nothing has changed in the world, but the world is changing. So
Right.
yeah, like, incrementally implement these tools in your organization at the very, very low levels. Like, make it easy. Don't worry about spending the money, allocate the budgets, and like, go with it. Get things in place. I think getting started somewhere is critical.
Very cool. All right, Daniel. I know we are over time, so thank you so much for this time. Really enjoyed this conversation and learning a lot about like how Shopify is adopting AI and how the roles are changing. So, is there anything the community of HangarDX, the listeners, can do for you? And the other question is like, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, I love developer experience. Like, my dream job, I landed in developer tools automatically. I don't know, accidentally, multiple times now. I joke that I wrote the Jenkins ANSI color plugin because like, my company was using Jenkins, and I was staring at the black and white like log, and I was like, I need ANSI colors here. This is ridiculous.
Nice.
I can't unescape the output in this
That's really cool.
thing. So I still have people who email me and they're like, hey, my Jenkins is broken after I install the ANSI color plugin. They're like, that's great. I wrote it in 2011, not 2012. So if you love developer tools like I do, find me on my blog, codedeblog.org. Email me on my personal email. Like, come chat in New York about developer tools and AI. Like, all the stuff is great, but better. Go look at the open source projects that I work on and that we at Shopify work on. Like, Shopify Roast is a great place to start. Start there, contribute, and then I will always talk to anyone who makes a pull request and it gets merged into any open source project we have out there.
Amazing.
So
Now
that's
you
how
can
you can
use.
help. Let's like work together.
Amazing. And I'm guessing like a lot of engineers can now also use AI to make changes and improvements to Roast.
I mean, it is an AI workflow tool. It's actually quite straightforward, and it drives AI workflows. Like, write workflows, improve the tool.
Nice.
You will be doing what we're doing every day at work.
Amazing. All right, Daniel. I'll also put like some reference links in the show notes so people can find you easily. And also, I will do a plug. If you are into developer experience, we run this community. We run virtual events for that as well. Love to have you also join one of our next events. So
Thanks so
with
much
that,
for having me.
yeah, thank you so much, Daniel. This was a pleasure. Have a
Of
great day.
course. Have a great day, you too. Bye.